Let's move on to accounting principles applicable to specific sources of revenue. Our first focus is accounting for membership and subscription fees. This membership and subscription fees can be collected in three ways. What are they? Let's see one by one. It can be a non-refundable fee. It can be a refundable fee, or the third one, it can be a periodic fee. Let's see one by one. Now, it can be a non-refundable fee for use of all services of the website for all services separately, or it can be a non-refundable fee but a one-time payment for indefinite use of services of the website. And third, it can be non-refundable fee to use the services of the website for a specified time period. Okay, so this is the first classification, non-refundable fee. Then the second one is refundable fee, but it will be subject to certain conditions that are stipulated in subscription agreement. The third one is periodic membership or subscription fee, which can be collected on monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. Now, how accounting is going to be done for each and every way in which the fee is collected, we'll see them in next session. Let's move on to accounting treatment for the first item, that is non-refundable fee for use of all services of the website separately. Let's get started. Here there are two elements involved. One is initial membership, the other one is revenue. Now what we have to understand is the initial membership is actually in the nature of entrance fee, so it should ideally be capitalized. Whereas the revenue that can arise on account of rendering of services or supply of products should be recognized as per AS 9. So when we talk about non-refundable fee for use of all services of website, we have two components. One is initial membership fee and the other one is revenue. To understand this better, let's take the example of Amazon Prime. Now Amazon Prime offers, or we can say it's a paid service, where during the seasonal period or during the seasonal service or during the seasonal sale, let me just modify this. During the seasonal sale, the subscribers will be given access at least an hour prior to the other customers. So this facility is made available to those who have paid the subscription or membership fee, and this fee is only for accessing the website and it does not include for any products purchased. It means whatever the products purchased, they are going to be charged separately. So what it means here, a fee has been paid, we call it as a membership fee or subscription fee, that gives them access at least an hour prior to the opening of the site for the general public, and it enables them to purchase the products at a better price compared with others at least an hour before, or they can have early access. That's the advantage. So without the traffic getting into the site or hitting the site, they have the privilege of accessing. So if you notice, it has two components. One is the subscription or membership fee. The other one is when the subscriber enters the website, he is going to purchase goods. So there is a sale of goods on the website. The subscription or membership fee should be capitalized, whereas the sale of goods on website is revenue in nature and it should be accounted as per AS 9. Okay, so this is the accounting treatment for non-refundable fee for use of all services of website separately. Let's move on to accounting treatment for non-refundable fee for use of all services of website indefinitely. Here what they are going to collect is only the initial fee, but wholly or partly it is an advance payment for the products or services to be provided or rendered in future. So this implies that service will be rendered on a continuous basis on the basis or after collection of this upfront fee. So even if this is non-refundable, it is actually a revenue earned for products or services to be delivered or rendered as per the terms of arrangement for the expected period of performance. So the recognition should ideally be deferred systematically over the period in which the fee is earned. But here we have uncertainty because there is uncertainty involved with the usage of service indefinitely. So we have to recognize the revenue on a deferred basis for a period not less than 5 years. It means you should recognize it at least for 5 years period, and this should happen on systematic and rational basis, and time proportion is the best systematic and rational basis, but you can also go for any other basis which can be on the basis of usage, which can even be more representative. Okay, so why we are talking about this? Because we said we have to recognize it at least for 5 years period, and on what basis you are going to recognize? It should be a systematic rational basis. It can be a time proportion, or it can be on the basis of usage. But what will happen if the period is less than 5 years? If the period is less than 5 years, then it should be recognized on systematic and rational basis, say on time proportion basis, unless you have another systematic rational basis which is even more representative of the service rendered, that is the usage of services. Okay, so this is the scenario when the period is below 5 years. Now to understand this better, let's take an example. We have the example of paid services of Naukri. Let's say they charge for 1 year rupees 1200, and for this 1 year period you have indefinite access, so you don't have any restriction on number of times and all. So this money received should be deferred for 1 year divided into 12 months. So when the money is received, you should be passing this entry, that is bank account debit to deferred revenue income credit. So there is an increase in bank balance, and you are recognizing something known as deferred revenue income. It means you have not recognized the income, it is parked in liability account. Fine. Let's say in the month of January you are providing service, say Naukri. So 1200 is received for 12 months. Then for the month of Jan, it's 1200 divided by 12 months multiplied by 1 month. So for 1 month it is 100. For that 100, revenue should be recognized. So already you have credited the deferred revenue income account. So let us debit that by 100, and now only we are crediting the revenue by 100. Okay, so here when the money is received, bank is debited, deferred revenue, that is liability, is credited. Now that liability is debited and revenue account is credited. So this is the accounting treatment in case of non-refundable fee for use of all services of a website indefinitely. Moving on to the accounting treatment for fee that is refundable subject to fulfillment of certain conditions stipulated in subscription agreement. If membership fee is refundable subject to certain conditions, then do not recognize that revenue on receipt itself, because it is refundable if the subscriber has fulfilled certain conditions. So in such cases, what you have to do is you can recognize that fee as revenue only when it is reasonably certain that conditions will not be fulfilled by the subscriber, so you cannot return the fee. Okay, so recognize the revenue only when it becomes reasonably certain that conditions will not be fulfilled. Till such time where you should park this, till such time the amount received should be retained in customer's refundable fees account. Accounting treatment for periodic membership or say subscription fees on monthly, quarterly, annual basis. In case of periodic fees, we can recognize them as revenue over the period of subscription. For this, we have to follow the principles of accrual accounting. Let's have a look at this example so that we can have a better picture. Let's say there's a company called X Limited. It is selling inventory tracking software online. And for using that, customer have to come to their website. They have to use their user ID password. Then they'll be able to track their inventory from the software which is made available by them. For this, to sign up, the customer should pay sign up fees of 5,000. Then every month beginning, there is a monthly subscription fee of rupees 5,000. So at the start of each new month, rupees 5,000 will be charged. Now what we should do with the sign up fees, what we should do with the fee which is going to be collected from next month, that is beginning of every month. See, the sign up fee will be used for providing service in the first month, then from next month onwards, in the beginning of every month, fee will be collected. Now this sign up fee which is received on day 1, we cannot recognize it as revenue on day 1 itself. Okay, because it's for providing service for next 30 days, and on next 30 days if he is not going to avail the service and if he is going to cancel and close it, then a situation may arise that we have to return back this money. Okay, so this sign up fees which is received on day 1 cannot be recognized as revenue on day 1 itself. It means till such time we have to retain it in deferred revenue account. So this is the entry we will pass. Bank account debit to deferred revenue account 5,000. Okay. So when can we recognize the revenue? Say at the end of the month, where we come to know that yes, we have provided all the services, then we can recognize the revenue. So already we have credited the amount received to the deferred revenue account. Now let us close that deferred revenue account. We'll debit it and we'll give credit to revenue account. So actually we are recognizing the revenue only at the end of the month, even though the amount is received in the beginning of the month itself. Okay, fine. Now, what is the rationale behind this? Why we are doing this? Because at any point of time, the business should know how much money has been collected from customers, how much is still in deferred revenue. It means money received, service not yet provided, and how much has been recognized as revenue by way of delivering the service. Okay, so this information is required at any point of time, and that's why we are making this bifurcations. Accounting for merchandising services. In case of merchandising services, the significant issue is to whether the revenue should be recognized on gross basis or net basis. That is, whether we should show the gross amount of revenue along with the related cost of sales on gross basis, or only the net amount of revenue, something like commission. This question would arise for e-commerce companies which are in the business of distribution, which are reselling the third party products or services, or which are mainly in B2C kind of a business. Okay, so what is the accounting approach? Let's see. If that e-commerce company is acting as a principal, it means it is assuming the risk and rewards of ownership. If there is risk of loss on account of collection, delivery, returns, if it is bearing that risk of loss also, then that e-commerce company should recognize the revenue and cost on gross basis. So the point is this: if you are acting as a principal, that is e-commerce company, if that e-commerce company is acting as a principal, that is, it is assuming the risk as well as the rewards of the ownership. The risk can be on account of loss in collection, delivery, returns and all. Then recognize the revenue on gross basis only. Let's have an example. Flipkart. Flipkart recognizes its revenue and cost on gross basis, but Flipkart acts as a principal. They assume the risk and rewards of the ownership. Okay, so this is the scenario when e-commerce company is acting as a principal. If e-commerce company is acting as an agent or broker, that is, it is selling goods or rendering services, but it will not assume the risk or rewards associated with the ownership, and the compensation is in the form of a fee or commission, then we can say it is engaged in the service of bringing the purchaser and seller together. Okay, then in such cases recognize only the service charges that is received. Do not go for gross basis. To understand it better, let's look at this example. We have a company called Magic Brick which deals in real estate sale on internet. It takes quotation from supplier, it approaches the buyer with options, so it is actually acting as an intermediary between the buyer and seller. Here, this company Magic Brick do not maintain inventory, do not bear risk and rewards. The income what it gets is only commission. So it is appropriate to recognize only that income. So we are not going for gross, we are going for net basis. So what we have understood is we have to see whether the e-commerce company is acting as a principal or agent. Accordingly, the accounting approach, that is whether it is going to be on gross basis or net basis, will undergo a change. Accounting for auctions. Some e-commerce companies will also host auction sites so that users can purchase or sell goods or services. Now the question is how this auction income should be recognized. This auction income or auction revenue can be divided into two. One, it can be in the form of a listing fees, and the other one can be in the form of transaction fees. What is listing fees? Listing fees is basically an upfront fee which is received by the e-commerce company when the seller or purchaser register with the website, and it should be maintained over a specified period. Now, how to recognize this listing fee? Whether we can recognize this listing fee on day one itself as income? Answer is no. This listing fee should be recognized over a period of contract or when it is ensured that there is no significant outstanding vendor obligations and the collection is also reasonably certain. So it is not recognized as revenue in the day one itself. It is recognized over a period of contract, but only after ensuring there are no significant outstanding vendor obligations and collection is reasonably certain. Let's have a look at this example. Say for example OLX. OLX provides this auction site also, okay, where goods and services can be listed. For that they'll be collecting upfront fee, let's say for example 2,400 for 12 months. So the accounting entry will be when this 2,400 is received, on receipt it will not be recognized as revenue, but bank entry have to be passed for the receipt and the credit will go to an account called a deferred revenue account. It means we are not recognizing all the revenue now. But let's say after 1 month we have to recognize revenue for this 1 month portion. So 2,400 is for 12 months, then for 1 month it is 200. So deferred revenue is created by 2,400. Let us debit it by 200 and will credit the income by 200 now. Okay, so this is the general accounting entry we pass in case of listing fees because it is or it should be recognized over the period of contract. Then the second auction revenue can be transaction fees. This is for facilitating the transaction and it is basically in the form of a percentage of revenue earned by the seller. Okay, because say the website is providing a platform for online sale. So whatever the sale they make, certain percentage will go as transaction fee to that website, that is e-commerce vendor. Okay, now how this revenue should be recognized? This revenue can be recognized when the transaction is completed and when it is confirmed that there are no further vendor obligations. Let's continue with our example on OLX. Now OLX is facilitating sale of a product. Okay, through their OLX website a product has been sold for 20,000 rupees. Now OLX may levy a transaction charge on the sale, let's say 2% of sale value 400. This 400 is payable to OLX as a transaction charge. An entry will be like this: bank account debit and credit is directly to the revenue account provided these conditions are satisfied, that is transaction is completed, there are no further vendor obligation. Okay, so this is the entry we will pass in case of transaction fees, and these are all the entries related to auction revenue. Let's look at the procedure for accounting shipping and handling. Let's get started. Generally, e-commerce companies will be charging their customers for shipping and handling, and it may or may not be the direct reimbursement of cost incurred by the e-commerce companies. Okay, so some companies will display the charges, some companies will not show it separately. So what is the accounting treatment? Let's see. If the invoice is at composite rate, that is invoice includes shipping and handling charges That is, shipping and handling charges are not shown separately. That is, clear distinction is not possible between the product value and charges. Then in such cases, the treatment is include the charge as component of sales. Include the charge as component of sale. So when do we treat the charge as component of sales? When clear distinction is not possible between the product value and the shipping and handling charges. That is, it is included in the overall invoice value, then treat it as part of sales itself. But if this shipping and handling charges is recovered separately, let's say a specified amount or a percentage of sales, then do not include them in sales. It should be recorded separately. That is, this shipping and handling charges cannot be taken along with the turnover. It should not be shown as a part of revenue. It should be shown separately. Let's move on to accounting for multiple arrangements. E-commerce companies may be delivering more than one product or service, and concurrently they will also deliver additional product or services in future. And this additional product or services in future may include upgrades, enhancements, maintenance services. So these e-commerce operators, they would generally be bundling products and services at a consolidated price, if not in all cases, but now and then they go for this bundling offer. Now the question is how we are going to account for this. For accounting purpose, whatever is bundled should now be unbundled. That is, it should be unbundled as separate elements of the arrangement or contract. So now when you do the unbundling, two scenarios emerge. That is, you are going to unbundle the elements which are consolidated. So you should know what is the fair value of each and every element. That is, you have to arrive at the company specific fair values. So the two situations can be situation one, where objective evidence is available for company specific fair value. Scenario 2, objective evidence is not available for company specific fair value. What will you do, or what you should do when evidence is available? When evidence is available, we have to find out what would have been received if each item is sold or serviced separately. That is, what we are trying to do is we are trying to unbundle the bundled items, and when you do this unbundling, you know the company specific fair value for which objective evidence is available. In such case, when you unbundle, you will know what would have been received if each item is sold or serviced separately. In that case, we can find out what is going to be the amount which should be recognized. But we said company specific fair value, right? Now this company specific fair value should be determined with reference to the transactions that have been entered into with unrelated parties only. Okay, so what is happening here? Two or more products or services have been bundled. Now you are unbundling them. When you unbundle them, you are trying to understand what would have been the value or how much would have been received if each item is sold or serviced separately. So that amount should be determined only on the basis of the transactions that have been entered into with unrelated parties. Now, how to understand this better? Let's take an example. Let's say there is a e-commerce company. It is providing bundle service. That is, it is bundling two services. One is hosting website, the other one is website maintenance, and for that it is going to charge a composite fee of rupees 15 lakhs for 1 year and 6 months. Okay, now this is the bundled figure, and this bundled fee is for two services. Now if you want to account this, you need company specific fair value for these two services separately. That is, what would have been the amount if these services were provided separately. Let's say the evidence is available. say for hosting website, company used to charge 12 lakhs for 1 year, and for website maintenance they charge 6 lakh for 6 months. So now we have company specific fair value, and objective evidence is available for these two services which are bundled, right? So what is the fee amount? 15 lakh. Had it been provided separately, the fee would have been 12 lakhs and 6 lakh, but now in composite it is 15 lakh. So now our question is how we are going to distribute this 15 lakh among hosting, website and web maintenance. Now based on this knowledge, 12 lakhs and 6 lakhs will conclude that the revenue for bundle should be recognized in the ratio of 2:1, because 12 lakhs and 6 lakh was the amount. So 12:6 or 2:1. So 15 lakh into 2 by 3, that is 10 lakh, should go for web hosting. 15 lakh into 1 by 3, that is 5 lakhs, should go for web maintenance. Okay, so this is how we will recognize the revenue by unbundling the bundled portions. Fine. So this is the example where we had a scenario, that is objective evidence was available. Now what we will do if objective evidence is not available? If objective evidence is not available, then we have to defer the revenue recognition till evidence comes into picture, or till all the elements of the arrangement are delivered. Say the elements of arrangement can be website maintenance, web hosting. So until or unless and until you deliver all this, do not recognize the revenue. Okay, so here the point is, if objective evidence is not available, you have to defer the revenue recognition till evidence comes into picture or all elements of arrangement are delivered. But the point is whichever is earlier. Okay, so in these cases it is the composite amount, that is 15 lakhs, will be recognized as revenue when delivery of all element take place. Fine. In this session, let us focus on accounting for advertising services, especially in the online space or e-commerce space. Now these advertising services will have their revenue from two principal sources. One is from banner advertisements and the other one is from sponsorship advertising contracts. These banner advertisements are generally for shorter duration, whereas sponsorship advertising contracts are longer terms because they would involve service integration and they focus on particular events, say something like sweepstakes, lotteries. So in these cases, visitors will be encouraged to complete the transaction by clicking the HTTP link. We call it as click-throughs. Okay, so this is sponsorship advertising contracts. Okay, that is the second main source. Now when they sell advertisement, they are going to sell it in two different forms. One where they guarantee minimum number of clicks or click-throughs, and the other one without guarantee of minimum number of clicks or click-throughs. So how to account when there is a guarantee, how to account when there is no guarantee, that's what we are going to see in next two sessions. We understand that online advertising services can be given in two different forms, that is where they can guarantee the minimum number of clicks or click-throughs, and the other one no guarantee. In this session, let us focus on the cases where there is going to be guarantee of minimum number of clicks and how accounting should be done or how revenue should be recognized. Okay, so in these cases we can recognize the revenue, or we should recognize the revenue on the basis of number of impressions or click-throughs, unless some other systematic or rational basis is more representative of the revenue recognition. So the point is, if guarantee is available for number of impressions or click-throughs, we have to recognize revenue only on the basis of number of impressions or click-throughs. Okay, but if some other systematic or rational basis is available, and if it is going to be more representative than the number of impressions or click-throughs, then we can go with that systematic or rational basis. Okay, so going by number of impressions or click-throughs is the best method when you have guarantee of minimum number of clicks or click-throughs. And this is also in line with Accounting Standard 9 Appendix, because there it was mentioned that media commission should be recognized when advertisement appears before public and necessary intimation is received by the agency. Fine. If minimum guaranteed impressions are not met, then we have to postpone the recognition till guaranteed impressions are achieved. And we can recognize the revenue only when there are no significant obligations remaining at the end of the period and collection of the receivables are reasonably certain. Okay, so this is the revenue recognition criteria. Now let's look at one example. There is a company, ABC Communications, an online advertising agency, has entered into a contract with XYZ Limited for online advertisement. Okay, so ABC is what? Providing the service, and service receiver is XYZ Limited. And the advertisement tariff is like this: up to 100 clicks, no charges, so no revenue. 100 to 1000 clicks, revenue is 10,000. 1000 to 2000 clicks, revenue is 20,000. Greater than 2000 clicks, revenue will be 20,000, and it's going to be plus 100 per click for clicks greater than 2000. Fine. So this is the tariff. Now let's see the revenue recognition. Let's say in the month of January there are 85 clicks. When it is 85 clicks, this comes under less than 100 clicks category, so we cannot recognize any revenue. Whereas in the month of February there are 2020 clicks, so it's greater than 2000 clicks, so up to 2000 we have to recognize revenue of 20,000, right? And beyond 2000, so that's what we have here, we have to recognize the base revenue of 20,000, and beyond 2000, that is 20 clicks, that should be multiplied by 100, 2000. So total revenue recognition is 20,000 plus 2000, 22,000. Fine. So this is the accounting procedure or revenue recognition procedure when you have guarantee of minimum number of clicks or click-throughs. Let's see how to recognize revenue when the advertising agency is not guaranteeing the minimum number of clicks or impressions. When minimum number of clicks or impressions are not guaranteed, then revenue should be recognized on straight line basis over the period for which the banner is going to be hosted in the website, unless some other systematic or rational basis which are considered as more representative is available. Okay, so unless some other systematic or rational basis is available, this revenue should be recognized only on straight line basis over the period the banner is going to be hosted. Let's look at this example. XYZ Hotel enters into an agreement with Make My Trip for an advertisement, so a space allotted for advertisement banner. Now this revenue should be recognized over a period of display, and it is not at all linked to the number of views. Let's look at the price. Let's say the price is 24,000 per year for that advertisement banner space. Okay, so the amount received, or when amount received, the entry that will be passed is bank account debit to advance received account. It means this credit is not given to income, rather it is taken to a liability account called advance received account. Let's say at the end of first month, that is 1 month lapses, 24,000 is for 12 months, for 1 month it is going to be 2,000. So that 2,000 have to be recognized as revenue by debiting the advance received account and crediting revenue account. Okay, so this is how we recognize revenue in case of advertising services without guarantee of minimum number of clicks or impressions. Let's understand how to measure consideration in advertising barter transaction, and I'm going to answer that through a series of 5 questions. Okay, so first of all we have to understand that what is advertising barter transactions. That is, what exactly happens in exchange of advertising barter transactions. See, e-commerce companies, they'll be exchanging the right to place advertisement in each other websites. Let's say there are 2 e-commerce companies. They are going to exchange the right to place advertisement in each other websites. So let's say A and B, A is going to place advertisement in B, B is going to place advertisement in A, and both of them, they are not going to pay any cash for placing these advertisements because it's a barter transaction. Okay, so here what happens is they are exchanging the right to place advertisement in each other website. Similarly, they can also exchange the advertising time for products and services. So this is what happening in exchange of advertising barter transaction. No cash is involved, rather advertisements are exchanged. Fine. Now how we are going to recognize revenue from advertising barter transaction, because there is no cash involved. We can recognize only if fair values are readily determinable from entity's history. Let's say you are talking about company A. Company A has placed advertisement in company B's website. In return, company B has placed advertisement in company A's website. Here, the revenue can be recognized only if the fair values are readily determinable from entity's history. Now, what do I mean by fair value? How we are going to determine the fair value? What factors we should consider? Everything we have here. For determining the fair value, what factors should be considered? We have to consider three factors. Number one, the advertisement space that is surrendered. Number two, the transactions. Number three, economic circumstances. When I say advertisement space surrendered, let's say company A is surrendering the advertisement space for company B. Company B is using that space because company B has provided the platform for A to advertise. Okay, so here when advertisement space is surrendered for barter, it should be compared with advertisement space surrendered for cash in the same media, the same advertising vehicle. So the advertising vehicle can be in the form of a publication, website, or broadcast channel. But if you are trying to find out the fair value, okay, you should look at the advertisement space surrendered for barter with cash, and that too it should be in the same media, same advertising vehicle. So this is factor number one. Factor number two, you should look at the transactions and ensure they are not older than 6 months, so that we can ensure the comparable values whatever we have taken are current and they reflect the best estimate of price which the willing buyer and willing seller are willing to exchange for an item other than the distress sale. So here the focus is on transactions, and those transactions should not be older than 6 months, so that we can ensure we are having only the comparable values. The third factor is economic circumstances. Okay, in economic circumstances, what we have to understand is, if the economic circumstances are not good, that is, whatever the transactions what you have picked up, they are not representative of current fair value, then you can even go for transactions which are less than 6 months. Okay, I mean, only condition what we said here is it should not be greater than 6 months. Here you can go for the transaction less than 6 months. That's what obviously we'll be doing. But the point is, you can even go for a shorter period. Okay, it can even be 1 month. It can even be 10 days, because the transaction in the 6 month band, they are not representative of current fair value, so we can go for a shorter period. Okay, so these are all the factors which we should consider while determining the fair value. Fine. Next, what factors should not be considered for determining the fair value? Interesting question. Answer is, do not consider the cash transactions that have taken place subsequent to barter transaction. Okay, never ever consider the cash transaction that have taken place subsequent to barter transaction for arriving at the fair value. Right. Now, an interesting question. What are the characteristics in which similarity is expected in advertising space surrendered for cash vis-a-vis barter? It means, see, we are saying if you want to determine the fair value, you have to compare the advertisement space surrendered for barter with advertisement space surrendered for cash, and you have to ensure certain characteristics are similar. What are they? Number one, circulation, exposure, saturation. Whatever the space that is surrendered for cash and the space that is surrendered for barter, they should be similar. Then the timing of this advertisement space surrendered. Okay, it can be days, week, 24 hours, 7 days, season, but whatever you are picking up for cash with that of barter should be similar, that is timing. Number three, prominence, that is where this advertisement is going to be placed, that is page on site or section of the periodical or the location on the page or size of advertisement. Then the demographic features, who are the readers, okay, who are the viewers, who are the customers, and finally the duration, how long this advertisement is shown. Okay, so these are all the characteristics where similarity is expected on the advertisement space surrendered for cash with advertisement space surrendered for barter. Okay, so these are all the broad parameters which will help us to measure the consideration in advertising barter transactions. Okay, but the key point is when there is an advertising barter transaction, we can recognize revenue only if fair values are readily determinable from entity's history. Moving on to revenue recognition from other services. E-commerce companies may also earn revenue from web hosting and maintenance services. So in these cases, revenue should be recognized over the period for which this hosting service or maintenance service is provided, but there is a condition involved. Condition is this service should be provided on continuous basis. Okay, so when service is provided on continuous basis, then the revenue from hosting or maintenance can be recognized over the period for which service is provided. But we can also go for some other method, that is instead of recognizing it over the period, we can go for some other method, that is we can use the other method. When other method can be used, that is when we come across a even more systematic or rational method which is more representative than recognizing over a period, then we can go for another method. Okay, so this is the revenue recognition for web hosting and maintenance services. Let's see the revenue recognition for content selling. E-commerce companies will also be selling their content for a price through a download facility. The question arises as to the timing of recognition of the sale of this content. It is, a content is sold online, the purchaser will download the content. Now the question is when revenue should be recognized. The general principle is we can consider it as sale when it is delivered to the purchaser. How to understand? Look at this example. An organization called CA Classes, it is providing online classes. When student purchases the course, online course, they are provided with the username and password so that they can download the content. Here the contents are considered as delivered when user ID and password is made available to the students. It means when this user ID and password is made available, it is construed that sale has been made, content is delivered, so revenue should be recognized. Let's look at the recognition and measurement of cost, especially related to websites. Now they're all intangible asset, okay, because the cost that is incurred on website is basically on an intangible item. So we have to decide whether we should treat this as asset and capitalize it, or we should treat it as expense. For that we have to classify the phases into two, that is one research phase, the other one is development phase. The expenditure that are incurred on the website during the research phase should be expensed, whereas the expenditure that are incurred on the website during development phase, that is after research phase, and if it is made sure that or if it is established that future economic benefit will be generated, then that expenditure should be capitalized. Okay, so if any expenditure is incurred on website, if it is during research phase, it should be expensed. It means it should be taken to P&L, and during development phase it can be capitalized. It means it can be taken to balance sheet. Then the costs that are incurred in developing new websites also after the first website had become open to the users, it should be expensed during the period in which it is incurred. So the point is, if any other cost is incurred, even creating new websites, but if it is after the first main website of the company and after the first website made open to the user, then all those costs have to be expensed. That is, they should be taken to P&L in the period in which they are incurred. Apart from these costs, I mean the cost related to websites, apart from this, they will also have other expenditures like say acquiring tangible assets, land and building, then computer hardware, then they'll also acquire some softwares, intangible or knowledge based contents. Okay, so these items are not only unique for e-commerce business but also for others. Okay, so the normal treatment whatever we give, that should be given for those items also. So these two are something unique, so we have addressed it. Let's look at the treatment of rebates, discount and other sales incentives. If e-commerce company is offering the products at heavily reduced price, say it be products or service, but if it is offered at heavily reduced price in order to stimulate sales and generate new customers, then the treatment is it should be reduced from turnover. It should be given a treatment similar to trade discount. So this is the treatment when you have heavily reduced price. If this rebates, discount or incentives is given specific to a customer, okay, then the treatment is it should be deducted from turnover and it should be shown in statement of P&L as well. Okay, so this should be shown by way of a deduction from the value of a turnover in the statement of profit and loss. And third one, if these rebates, discount and other sales incentives are given in other forms, then they should be reckoned as selling and marketing expenses and they should be charged to profit and loss account. Let's move on to points and loyalty programs. These points and loyalty programs can be given in different structures. Number one, where the e-commerce company will be selling the points to business partners who will in turn issue to their customers based on the purchases or actions of the customers. Say for example, e-commerce companies are having an arrangement with a bookstore so that the bookstore will issue reward points to the customer who makes minimum volume of purchases. Here the customers will get reward points and they will exchange the reward points for using the e-commerce website. So this is the case where the reward points are sold by the e-commerce company to the business partner. We can also have the other structure where e-commerce company will be selling the points directly to the customers so that it will encourage the members to take actions and which would in turn generate payment from business partners. Okay, so these are all the two structures. Now what is the cost associated with the incentive? Obviously there is some revenue foregoing, there is a cost. Now the question is how we are going to account it. If that incentive is with reference to a particular customer only, then that should be shown as a deduction from turnover value. However, or for this purpose, appropriate estimate of cost is required. If this incentive or this loyalty points is general in nature, then instead of showing it as a deduction from turnover, we can go for a general provision. We'll treat it as an expense, we'll charge it in P&L. However, for this also we need appropriate estimate of cost. How to account for equity based consideration in e-commerce companies? Because e-commerce companies, they'll be funding their expenditures through issue of equity shares, because most of the time for them cash is not an available alternative to attract new business relationship, alliances or supplier agreements. Okay, so whenever equity based consideration is given for product, services or asset, to put it otherwise, if a product, service or asset is acquired in exchange of equity shares, then how accounting treatment should be. First of all, we have to see whether the transaction is between related parties or unrelated parties. Let's say the transaction is between the unrelated parties and they are acquiring the product or service or asset in exchange of shares, and for this product or asset or service some value has been placed. Okay, now this is a transaction between unrelated parties and some value has been placed for those product or service or asset. Then in such case the value that is placed is the fair value. Then at this fair value only it should be recognized. Fine. So this is the case where you are issuing equity shares for the product or service or asset acquired and the transaction is between unrelated parties. Let's say it's a transaction between related parties and value has not been placed for the product or service or asset. In such cases, what we have to do is we have to see whether fair value of the product or service or asset is available. If it is available, then we have to recognize at the fair value of the product or service or asset, and if it is not available, then we have to see whether the fair value of the equity transferred is available. If fair value of equity transferred is available, then it should be recognized at the fair value of equity. So this is how we account for equity based consideration.